Thank you for joining my American History Notes, where I discuss my conclusions that I've drawn from studying American history, studying historians, primary sources like letters, laws, journals, things like that. But you find a historian that you trust, or some historians that you trust, scholarly works, and and uh, and and then draw your own conclusions. You don't have to agree with what I believe, but at least you should know about the events and the people that I'm talking about, no matter what you think. So let's begin. So we're going to talk about the American Indian influence, Native American influence on science and medicine to begin with, and then we'll go into a little more later. So the Indians also contributed to not only to names, language, and place names, but contributed to our understanding of science and medicine. In 1612, through their advice, the Virginian colonists learned to grow and cure tobacco on a large scale and use it as a prime export commodity to England, according to the Timeline Book of Science by George Ochoa and Melinda Corey. In the 1700s, it was noted that Indian tribes kept wounds clean after clashes with European colonists, and the colonists found this, quote, primitive treatment to be effective in the recovery of their own wounded. The Indians also isolated the wounded for treatment and did not keep them in infirmaries where infection spread and likelihood of death over even a small wound was great. Indian women were known to have used quinine, sassafras, datura, ipecac, cascara, and witch hazel to treat minor sickness and wounds. Excuse me. All of these would enter our modern medicinal usage. All through the colonial period, there were the relations with the Native American that were sometimes peaceful and sometimes very violent. Different tribes had different ways of handling the European intruder. Some lived peaceably with them, and others were just as duplicitous and conniving as the Europeans. There were those who made alliances with the whites and those who fought them as long as their strength held out. In the end, it was about territory and land. The colonists needed and demanded land that the Indian once hunted and farmed for his own needs. And with each decade, the unfortunate Native Americans were pushed westward, while others were annihilated, others moved forcibly, and finally, those that were left either assimilated into white culture or formed their own small enclaves in the Sea of Colonies. Much of the land deals made with Indians were perfectly legitimate according to European experience. A price was set and it was paid. The Indian chieftains often made bad deals, though, and established poorly thought out alliances. But truthfully, who was going to be in control of North America was often in question. So it's easier in hindsight to say that they should have allied themselves with English colonists rather than any other. In spite of their native knowledge on medicine, epidemics were beyond their understanding. At first, the diseases and epidemics decimated the Indian population, and then there was simply no way for them to resist the tide of North American colonization. It was inevitable that they would lose control of the land that they once freely roamed. And I'm not making a judgment call. I'm talking about this is conquest, like many conquests in history. I just want to point out that the Native American was not an innocent child. There were many sophisticated tribes and sophisticated leaders and sophisticated alliances formed and dissolved and formed again. And this was a continuing war. So I do want you to study it and to have your own view, draw your own conclusions. We're going to talk next about the efforts to convert the Native American to Christianity. We'll begin with that next time. Thank you and have a good day.